accompanies the decline in religion, in belief in the Christian religion in Europe when it first begins. And there's a notable increase in the use of the word angel in love poetry in the 19th century. So literally, what we're doing with the cult of romanticism is taking the angels down from the heavens where they live and learning to live with them here on earth. And so we might be calling our partners angel, maybe casually around the kitchen here in Melbourne. That has a long history, the secularization of love and the turning of love from divine love to human species love. And that is a major shift. It's also quite a dangerous one. You see, if you go into a relationship thinking that the other person's kind of perfect, like a secularized angel, they've taken off their wings, it's going to be real trouble the moment you have your first big argument. It's like, well, I thought we were supposed to be perfect. Oh, I thought you were an angel. So what's going on? So one of the great enemies of sustaining long-term relationships is self-righteousness, which leads to bitterness and anger and a feeling of vengeance because somebody has let you down. Somebody who was meant to be an angel has turned out to be a really troubling thing, which is a human being. And what is that? That makes you quite angry. And the thing about human beings, and I don't mean to be rude with this, the thing about human beings is actually we're all crazy. You're crazy and I'm crazy. All of us are crazy. It's not a rude thing, it's just all of us have not managed to get through the gauntlet of childhood without all sorts of warps and distortions and bizarre peculiarities in our characters. It just is a fundamental thing about us. But it's too little known. We don't necessarily bring that knowledge of our brokenness. We don't call it sinfulness, but let's call it brokenness, messed upness. We don't know very much about it. And sometimes we labor under the illusion that if only we found the right partner, we would be easy to live with. Does anybody here feel that, broadly speaking, they would be quite easy to live with? Again, I don't want to be rude. It's just not true. I don't need to know you personally, or you know you personally doesn't know it's not true. You are a human being, and that means that from close up you're trouble. You're really and it's just going to take a bit of time for other people to find out. Why don't we know more about how troubled we are? I think there's a kind of little bit of a conspiracy of silence hovering around us. So many people can't quite be bothered to tell us or just bring up the courage. That our parents, for example, they know a lot about what's wrong with us, but they're so sweet. They like us. They're not going to initiate us into the more troublesome aspects of our characters. Then there's our friends, very nice people too. They know more about your character and about its flaws than you will know in 40 years of introspection. Why don't they tell you? They don't care that much about you. They just want a nice evening out, come to the town. It's the philosopher. They don't want to go into it, right? So that's that. What about your exes? Well, they're a vital store of knowledge. Your exes spotted a lot of things along the way, but when they called it a day and said they needed to go to India, find a little bit more space, for a commitment, need to do further, all those things, nonsense. They said that because they were kind. Remember that lovely quote from Proust, at the end of love, it is the person who is not in love who makes the tender speeches. So if anyone's making a tender speech, you know how it is. So when they're making the tender speeches, they can't be bothered to tell you either, because, anyway, so you basically enter into adult existence very shorn of that knowledge of some of your trickier personalities. And that makes you quite difficult. I think, look, the only people who are normal are people we don't yet know very well. That may be us, but basically the only people we can think of as normal are those we're seeing kind of from afar. I think if I was running the world, one of the standard questions on an early dinner date would simply be, you turn to your partner, prospective partner, and you go, so how are you crazy? Like, I'm crazy like this. How are you crazy? And like, all of us have got lots of crazy inside, but we'd be able, without hysteria, to outline it to another person, because we don't need people to be perfect, but we need people to be able to explain their imperfections before they've hurt us with them. And it's really hard to get really interested in the origins, the poignant origins of someone's imperfections when you're at the sharp end of them, when you've suffered. You're no longer interested. When somebody's really upset you with their craziness, you're not interested anymore in like what they were like when they were 3 and their dad shouted at them and their mum was absent. It's like, I don't care. But right now, you've really pissed me off. So I'm not on your side. So we need to do it in good time. We need to do it at a time when that knowledge is still going to get through to them. And also, incidentally, by the time it comes to a wedding, we should be writing a large manual, 150 pages or so, called My Imperfections, and you just hand it to your partner. so much time. You just, okay, I get this now. You wouldn't stumble upon these in anger and rage and confusion 5 months or 5 years down the line. It would all be in the manual. So, look, there are other things that make romanticism quite a sort of troubling idea. But one of them is the idea, as I mentioned before, that instinct is going to be the force that leads you to meet the right partner. So, remember, in the olden days, parents, elders, community, they're the ones getting you together. And then suddenly, it's you, your feelings are going to drive you to the right person. So much, 50 years of marriage relies on you having that really special feeling, and that special feeling being a reliable feeling. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the bad news is that feeling is trouble. That feeling does not reliably guide us to the right people. Why not? It's got to do with how love works. Now, you don't need to believe very much about psychotherapy or psychoanalysis to understand one very basic concept, one basic tenet in relation to love, which is that the way that we love as adults is vitally shaped by what we learned about love as children. And that what we're doing in adult love often is seeking a familiarity that a recreation of a familiar situation that we knew from childhood. And that's something very basic to the way we go about finding our adult partners. Now, the problem for our chances of being content as adults is that our childhood loves, we're likely to have learned about love in ways that were at the same time rather warped, that there were things mixed in with our understanding and initiation into love that are a little bit difficult. Maybe our mother was depressed and we had to cheer her up all the time. Maybe our father was quite stern and maybe a little envious of us, so we had to downplay our character. Whatever it was, there are always things. There's always stuff in everybody's childhood. There's things in your childhood. And those things mean that we enter adult life looking for partners in rather problematic ways. We are not merely looking to find love, we're looking to find familiarity.